More than 24 hours after a massive explosion rocked the port area of Bandar Abbas in southern Iran, fires are still burning, the casualty count keeps rising, and repair teams are hard at work. Many questions hang over the scene, including the biggest question of them all. Was it an accident or was it the result of sabotage? One thing is becoming clear. Whether it was an accident or not, this incident was much more significant than what we thought. It came just as the nuclear deal between Iran and the United States of America was beginning to take shape, and that is probably not a coincidence. There are many forces, both inside Iran and amongst the many enemies of the Ayatollah regime, that might want to cause problems for them in the negotiations with the United States. On the other hand, maybe the most obvious possibility that Israel carried out a sabotage operation is the correct one. On Sunday evening, Iranian authorities, who initially said it was an accident, started saying that they believe it was the result of Israeli sabotage. And a source close to the Revolutionary Guards also admitted in an anonymous statement to the New York Times that the material that was ignited, causing the initial explosion, is a critical component in producing solid fuel for ballistic missiles. In any case, there's a few things that we know for sure. As of Sunday evening, there were 40 confirmed fatalities from the blast and over 1,000 more people that got injured. The number of fatalities will almost certainly rise in the days ahead, as at least 190 people remained hospitalized on Sunday evening, according to reports in the international media. In addition to that, the air quality in Bandar Abbas, which is poor even during normal times, is now highly toxic. Authorities are advising residents to stay inside as much as possible, keep windows closed, and use air filters and masks if possible. Iran's economy already is in a bad shape after years of sanctions and poor management by the regime, has also taken another big hit from this incident. The Iranian Port Authority made an initial assessment that as much as 57% of loading and offloading capacity was damaged due to the explosion and the resulting fires. When we remember that this port is used to offload almost 85% of Iran's annual imports, including food and consumer goods, we can begin to appreciate the magnitude of this event. When we also remember that this port includes terminals that handle most of Iran's oil exports, we can also appreciate the effect that this already is having on the global oil markets and the already fragile world economy. So with all of this in mind, messages of condolences and offers of assistance have come from many of Iran's neighbors, including Russian President Vladimir Putin. And closer to home in Israel, the IDF struck a weapons warehouse in Beirut's Dahya neighborhood in Lebanon on Sunday, destroying a cache of Hezbollah's precision missiles. And prior to the strike, the IDF Arabic spokesman warned the residents of El Khadat area of Beirut to evacuate, and Israel also notified the United States that it is intending to hit strategic weapons that Hezbollah had stored in that area. And meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, a Hamas weapons cache was found in UNRWA sacks near civilian buildings. This is just the latest example of Hamas using United Nations facilities and materials to mask its military activities. And speaking of which, there is a troubling trend of Hamas using hit-and-run tactics with increasing effectiveness in the buffer zones that the IDF has established inside the Gaza border area. The IDF has suffered casualties, including fatalities from these strikes, including an ambush near the city of Sajaiya over the weekend. The IDF has declared the defeat of the organized Hamas battalions in this and several other areas, but small squads of guerrilla fighters continue to mount attacks with some successes that harm our troops. And further to the south, the Houthis in Yemen are also continuing to launch attacks against Israel, despite suffering devastating strikes by the United States military for almost a full month now. For the second time in 24 hours, the IDF intercepted a UAV from the Houthis as it was approaching Israeli airspace on Sunday afternoon. So guys, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 570 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region who are operating under the command of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. And a moment before we begin, I'd like to invite you to click the subscribe button so you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. As of late Sunday evening, damage control crews were continuing to battle fires at the Shihab Rajai port in the city of Bandar Abbas in southern Iran, following the huge explosion that occurred there yesterday. Firefighting forces were seen using planes and helicopters that dropped water from the air, and Iranian Interior Ministry Ashkenaz Momeni said that the forces have so far brought 80% of the blaze, which has raged for a full day, under control. Earlier in the day, he said that fires would be out in a few hours, but a short time later, the flames flared up again after additional containers exploded. Authorities were reporting that the number of fatalities has risen to 40, with over 1,000 others injured. 120 of them remained hospitalized on Sunday evening, and state media simultaneously reported that activity at the port has partially resumed in undamaged areas, and Iranian television aired images of containers being unloaded from a ship that docked in the port. However, authorities also admitted that the port's facilities had been severely damaged and air quality for several kilometers around the site of the initial blast was dangerously low. Even further away, throughout the entire city of Bandar Abbas, residents were advised to stay inside with the windows closed as much as possible. Some authorities also suggested that residents use air filters and masks. Children are especially vulnerable, and as a father myself, that touches my heart. So guys, let's unite in prayer for the children of Bandar Abbas in Iran. On Sunday afternoon, for the first time, an Iranian official pointed a finger to blame Israel. Iranian Member of Parliament Muhammad Sarraj claimed without citing any evidence that Israel was involved in the explosion at Rajai port. It was not accidental. Explosives were planted in the containers, either in the country of origin or along the transport route. We do not rule out internal elements placing explosives in the containers, and clear evidence indicates Israeli involvement. The explosion occurred at 4 different points. Meanwhile, dramatic footage from the scene of the explosion was posted online beginning on Saturday afternoon. They included a video of the moments just before the explosion, when a fire broke out amongst the packing containers, growing rapidly as workers tried to run away on foot and in vehicles. Then, the explosion itself puts an abrupt end to the video, which appears to have been taken with someone's phone camera. Other film shows the explosion from further away, showing a bright orange mushroom cloud and intense flames. Analysts told media portals that the bright orange flames indicate the presence of ammonia and other chemicals in the fire. The sound of the explosions were reportedly heard at least 50 kilometers away, while windows were broken in buildings 30 kilometers away, and even greater damage was sustained by hundreds of buildings closer to the blast site. In the port area itself, almost every building sustained heavy damage, along with hundreds of vehicles, cranes, and other infrastructure. The Iranian regime has announced that it will investigate the circumstances around the explosions and has not yet made any official statement about the cause. But unofficially, there are reliable reports that the explosion occurred in an area that was being used to store certain chemicals that are a major component in the solid fuel used to propel Iran's ballistic missile arsenals. And specifically, Shahid Rajia port received shipments from China in recent months of sodium Perchlorate, a critical component for producing solid rocket fuel. AP even quoted a security company, Umbrea, as saying that the fire might have been caused by mishandling of solid fuel intended for ballistic missiles. And late Saturday evening, expert assessments were already being published that this material ignited and caused the massive explosion, and this was later confirmed in a report by the New York Times, which quoted a source that said to be linked to the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. In any case, the spokesperson for Iran's emergency management organization, Hossein Zafari, claimed in an initial statement that the explosion resulted from improper storage of those containers of sodium perchlorate. Iranian government bodies such as the National Security Committee, Customs, and the Ministry of Defense also addressed the explosion at the Rajai port. Despite the statement by Zafari that appeared to admit the improperly stored containers of sodium perchlorate had detonated, causing the explosion, the statements by these agencies flatly denied this. They claimed the containers that held fuel were not used for military purposes and dismissed foreign media reports that they were as a psychological operation carried out by the enemy. The spokesman for Iran's National Security Committee confirmed that according to initial reports, the Rajai port incident has no connection to our defense sector's activities. So to make a brief comment on all of this, the Iranian regime has been caught lying about all kinds of things over the years, and it should not surprise anyone that one part of the regime says one thing while the other parts say the exact opposite. That's what's happened when a regime or an individual starts lying. Soon, they lose track of what's true, what's not, who the intended audience of the lies are, who, if anyone, should be trusted with the truth, and so on. In a situation like this, where something has happened that has devastating consequences for hundreds of thousands of innocent people, whose only crime is being residents of the city of Bandar Abbas and are now breathing highly toxic air, the consequences of living by deceit and gaslighting speak for themselves. That is why at TBN Israel, we take the truth and we seek for the truth very seriously. And we know that you, our viewers, do as well. So thank you so much for standing by the truth and for helping us share what we know on the situation in the Middle East. Now, speaking of toxic air, it's been a long time since I took chemistry in high school, so I can only tell you what I've heard in the reports about this substance. To start with, it is a salty compound containing chlorine and 4 oxygen atoms. Perchlorates such as sodium, ammonium, and magnesium perchlorate are used in various industries like agriculture, pharmaceuticals, and manufacturing of multiple things, and also in military applications such as explosions and rocket fuel. That tracks with the Chinese officials responding to this incident by saying that there is no law against selling these chemical components to Iran, as they have other uses aside from making rocket fuel. And with all of this in mind, this incident comes amidst ongoing nuclear talks between Iran and the United States, and it is sure to have dramatic impact on those negotiations. Iran's foreign minister Abbas warned Israel this week against sabotage attempts or assassinations during the negotiations, posting a statement on X warning that the attempts by the Zionist regime and special interest groups to sabotage diplomacy using a variety of tactics are clear to everyone. Our security services are on high alert in light of past sabotage and assassination attempts. Now, again, to make a brief comment of my own, Iran is currently negotiating with the United States, and the explosion at the port occurred exactly in parallel with a third round of talks yesterday in Oman. So it's fair to ask if deliberate sabotage has been committed as part of an attempt to harm the negotiations. On the other hand, it may well have been the result of negligence or a mistake. Iran has experienced many such events before due to its negligence infrastructure, which it struggles to repair because of United States sanctions that severely harmed its economy, as well as poor and corrupt management. Whatever the reason, the explosion in Bandar Abbas will certainly have an effect on the nuclear talks, where Donald Trump's administration is trying to leverage pressure on Iran to push it towards certain understandings. The discussed agreement is expected to limit Iran's nuclear program and increase oversight in exchange for lifting sanctions that should improve Iran's economy. Central disputes include Iran's insistence on effectively retaining and legitimizing an independent uranium enrichment capability under the guise of a civilian nuclear program. These capabilities would allow it, whenever it chooses, to revive the nuclear program, enrich at high speed, and break out to a bomb quickly. However, the Iranian regime needs quick steps to ease public anger and frustration over the economy and the generally poor quality of life in Iran, so the nuclear agreement could signal that the regime is addressing these concerns. In any case, the damage to the port from the explosion will lead to further economic hardships in Iran, and the United States can use that as leverage in the negotiations. Iran may prefer a rapid end to the talks, even at the cost of certain compromises, partially to reduce the economic and the political pressure on it. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in Iran, and as always, we ask you to keep spreading the truth, share and follow us, and most importantly, click the subscribe button so you stay tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Now, switching our focus to Israel's northern arena, on Sunday, the IDF struck a Hezbollah warehouse in Beirut, which was being used to store strategic assets, including guided missiles. The strike came after warnings were issued to residents of the neighborhood to evacuate. Hezbollah had referred to the warehouse as its victory tent, but now it's just a smoking ruin, much like many other Hezbollah facilities in Lebanon that Hezbollah bragged about before Israel destroyed them. A press statement declared that under the guidance of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, the IDF forcefully struck infrastructure in Beirut where Hezbollah's precision missiles were stored, which posed a significant threat to the state of Israel. Israel will not allow Hezbollah to build up and create any threat against it anywhere in Lebanon. Beirut's Dakheh district will not serve as a safe haven for the Hezbollah terrorist organization. The Lebanese government bears direct responsibility for preventing these threats. Israel will stand by its war goal of returning the northern residents safely to their homes. The IDF spokesperson said after the strike, the IDF struck using fighter jets in the Dakheh area of Beirut and destroyed infrastructure in which Hezbollah precision missiles were stored. Storing missiles in this facility is a blatant violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon and a threat to the state of Israel and its citizens. Hezbollah stored missiles in a structure in the heart of the civilian population. This is another example of the terror organization's cynical use of Lebanese civilians as human shields. Prior to the strike, steps were taken to reduce the chance of harming uninvolved persons, including an advance warning to the local population and the use of precision munitions. The IDF will continue to act to remove any threat to the state of Israel. And meanwhile, despite almost a month of airstrikes by the United States military and a threat of ground offensive by the internationally recognized government of Yemen, the Houthis are still firing weapons at Israel. On Sunday morning, for the second time in 24 hours, the Air Force of Israel intercepted a UAV, a drone, on its way to Israeli territory from the east, apparently from Yemen. So here at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on every development in the Middle East, in Israel, in this situation, and we encourage you to share our videos and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Although there were no injuries from the Houthi drone fire at Israel on Sunday, in Israel, emergencies can strike at any moment, including war, rocket fire, terror attacks, or even natural disasters like earthquakes or forest fires. When these disasters strike, Magen David Adom is the lifeline rushing to the scene. On April 7, 2025, Magen David Adom launched a new fleet of electric bikes, giving medics the ability to reach patients faster in crowded or hard-to-reach areas. These bikes are already saving lives, and they exist thanks to people like you who give from around the world to this organization. This kind of support isn't just helpful, it's vital. It keeps Magen David Adom fast, prepared, and fully equipped to respond when every second counts. As the New Testament reminds us, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. So guys, go to SaveLifeIsrael.com and help keep Magen David Adom, the lifeline of Israel, strong, mobile, and ready to save lives. Now back to the news, and we conclude today's report by taking a look at events inside the Gaza Strip. The IDF spokesperson's office announced on Sunday that the combat team of the Iron Fist Armored Brigade located a Hamas weapons cache that had been hidden in an UNRWA sacks, the bags that UNRWA used to deliver food and humanitarian aid, near civilian buildings in Rafah. During the operation, the forces found UNRWA humanitarian aid sacks in which Hamas had concealed the weapons cache about 80 meters from a building that had once served as a school and about 100 meters from a building that had served as a hospital in the city of Rafah in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. In addition, the forces directed by the brigade fire cell eliminated dozens of terrorists and destroyed several booby-trapped houses. This is just one incident amongst many that indicate the high intensity of ground fighting between the IDF units and Hamas in the Gaza Strip over recent days. And meanwhile, Qatar's Prime Minister said on Sunday that the talks between Israel and Hamas are progressing, but did not specify in what way they had advanced after the war resumed because of Hamas's refusal to release the Israeli hostages. However, according to him, some progress was recorded on Thursday between the sides, adding that we need to find an answer to the ultimate question, how to end this war. That is the key point of all the negotiations. The Qatari leader also claimed that Hamas is ready to release all the hostages if the war indeed ends, but that Israel is not prepared to take the step to end the war. He said, when you do not have a common goal, a common objective between the parties, I believe the opportunities to end the war become very scarce. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on all these issues going forward, and as always, we ask you to help us spread the truth of what's happening in Israel and in this region. And if you want to do that, you can share our videos on YouTube, subscribe to TBN Israel, and look for us on social media. We also ask you to keep praying, because prayer works, and this is a spiritual war. So please pray for the hostages to be released from the Gaza Strip. Keep praying for the soldiers of the IDF. Pray for all the innocent lives in this region. And please keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.